Dan, let's start with you then. Let's go to Riccardo Calafiori. It was James Horncastle who first mentioned Riccardo Calafiori and Liverpool potentially being interested in him of the Athletic. And listen, if anyone knows Serie A in England, it's James Horncastle. Since then, actually, and I've got the guys from This Is Anfield who've kind of collaborated this for us, they've said that both the Times is Gary Jacob and a local Bologna source, Correa de Bologna, apologies if I might butcher that Italian, have both backed up Liverpool's interest in the player. So you've got the Athletic, the Times, and a local edition of an outlet in Bologna now, all saying that Liverpool are interested in the player. There's been some, of course, pushback about him joining Juventus, and that maybe Bologna aren't exactly thrilled for him to join there, given that it was a Thiago Motta
deal. They weren't happy.
There's a bit of bad blood between those two sides. So again, it feels like, again, we don't know it's definite, but there's a lot of what you'd call high-end sources now linking Liverpool at least having an interest in the player. Yeah,
I'd say so, yeah. And particularly I'd say Horncastle, albeit he was the very first one to sort of mention Liverpool in the same breath as Calafiori. And it's interesting how the calibre of clubs has kind of gone up a level or two, and that's no disrespect to those mentioned in the first place, but I think it was like Brentford ourselves, obviously we do sit in that top bracket, but Brentford ourselves, maybe a West Ham in there, all of a sudden it's like your Real Madrid, your Chelsea's, your Arsenal's have all taken a look as well. And I think that's in no small part due to the way he's played in the European Championships up until now. He's been outstanding. He's actually suspended for the game tomorrow for Italy, actually, interestingly enough. But yeah, I think the fact that Horncastle was the one to first bring it to the table really sort of raised eyebrows for me, because you mentioned there he's a Serie A aficionado. He absolutely knows his stuff when it comes to that part of the world, 100%. But he's not really a transfer guy either. He's just an expert in his particular field, which happens to be Italian football. So the fact that he was willing and sort of well versed enough to and confident enough to say that Liverpool had inquired suggested, okay, there really is some sort of legs to this. So I thought that was really interesting. And since it's been backed up by a few different sources, you say, all with relatively strong amount of credibility. So I think Liverpool's interest, admiration, whatever you want to call it, is definitely genuine. I think a lot of people a few days ago were just saying basically, because I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying he has somewhat of an agreement in place with Juventus. It's just the actual transfer side of thing between the two clubs that they haven't been able to agree upon yet. And I was told by someone from Football Italia the other day that Bologna aren't keen on striking that agreement with Juventus for the reasons you mentioned there. So I think there's a hell of a long way to go in this saga. He's already said himself, Calafiori, he won't be addressing his future until after the Euros. So I think it's pretty much an open playing field now for all of these clubs, and Liverpool are right in amongst it.
I suppose as well, Chloe, what makes it somewhat unique, like I say, he is having a good Euros, and you never ever want to sign. I don't think you should ever sign a player based solely on a performance in a major tournament. Loads of teams have been stung by that in the past. Liverpool kind of got done a little bit, although with the Senegal stuff. Although to be fair,
the Owen Juve, we did get done.
No, but I think they were already looking at those players anyway. But then that just kind of got the excitement level up a little bit. But what makes it more interesting is that A, Dan mentions the calibre of clubs we were already in for, and B, the fact that Bologna owe a lot of his transfer fee out. If they sell him like 40% to 50%, it was reported like 40 to 50% goes straight back to is it Basel? To Basel. Yeah. Like you can imagine Bologna could, given how well he's played in this tournament, given the level of interest in him, this might not be a cheap deal. Like there was talk of like 40 million Euros, which is around £34 million. It feels like with every good performance at the Euros, and with another team being added in to the mix, that maybe if Liverpool are interested in him, I don't think this is going to be a deal that's like as cheap as perhaps it would have been if they first started looking at him a few months ago.
Yeah, I mean that's why when he scored that own goal, I thought to myself, oh, well, at least that's knocks 5-0 off his price tag there. Turns out now the next game he was sound as well. It seems like it'll go down to the highest bidder, but like you've mentioned there, Juve seem very, very interested in him. It seems like he's closer to Juve than anywhere else, and we already know how many times we've spoken about Italian players not really wanting to leave Italy, especially centre halves that are Italian, and I could see him wanting to go to Juve, but due to that Thiago Motta and the way he left, I'm hoping Bologna do stand firm. But it feels like even the clubs mentioned, Newcastle was one of those clubs as well, Chelsea, Arsenal, they're sides that can put down a pretty hefty price tag. So Liverpool will have to be competitive if that's the case. If someone somehow gets him for around 35 million quid, that is a joke. That seems like Liverpool should be completely and utterly all over that. But I would imagine due to the 40% increase after 6 million euros, that is what it was. I assume Bologna are just going to keep offering him round to each club until eventually no one wants to go as high as the next person. But the longer Italy go on in the Euros, the more his price tag goes up.
And I mean, the interest from Real Madrid, Dan, has been reported recently as well. Cody says he's off to Real Madrid, unfortunately. It feels like at the moment, anytime Liverpool get into a transfer tussle that might involve Real Madrid, the pessimists in us all think, well, that's where he's going to go. It's worth mentioning they can't sign everybody. Like, even they can't do that. And, Lenny Yoro's going there. Maybe they do go and sign a couple of centre-backs. So, I mean, if they wanted to, Calafiori can do a little bit at left-back as well. But the calibre of clubs, I think it's right that you mentioned before, has changed. So when I first noticed it was like Tottenham, Newcastle, Brighton. That was like, okay. Yeah, that was West Ham linked by Gary Jacob as well. And now you're starting to hear Arsenal. Now you're starting to hear Real Madrid. Juventus is the big one. There's a leap there. Liverpool will be quite happy, I think, getting into a transfer tussle with West Ham, Newcastle, Tottenham, Brighton. You'd fancy your chances of a player choosing you. Once Real Madrid come in, you can put Arsenal into that mix. Juventus, like I say, that makes it a different type of thing. That isn't as easy a sell. Where, I mean, hopefully everyone would want to join Liverpool, but we've seen before Liverpool have lost out to teams in the past. Yeah,
certainly muddies the water, particularly when Real Madrid comes to the table. Absolutely, yeah. I kind of view the Calafiori Madrid thing, and I could be wrong. I hope I'm not. Of course, I view that as if they don't end up getting Lenny Yoro this summer, they will turn their attentions to Calafiori. The Juventus stuff, Chloe says there, I think it is ever so slightly more advanced than anybody else's chances up until this point, and that's, I guess, is to be expected given the fact that it's Serie A to Serie A. Any side, any player moving from a lower in inverted commas side up to someone like Juventus, one of the Milan clubs, even Napoli, that's a well-trodden path in Italy. That's no shock whatsoever, and especially when you throw in the fact that his manager, who gave him what was essentially his breakout season last time around, is also there ready and waiting for him. It makes a lot of sense from a playing point of view, so no shock there. But ultimately, if they can't come to an agreement and they can't reach the same sort of height that Premier League clubs can reach in terms of the riches and the wealth that we have, Bologna won't sell, because as you mentioned there, like that 40% caveat, that 40 to 50% caveat rather, is a big thing for someone like Bologna. They're going to want to extract every single possible penny, and that's why it will probably come down to an auction, and Liverpool needs to be right in amongst it. I think if you get sort of beyond 60, 70 million, you are getting into potentially silly money at that point, but I think anything between sort of the 35 that's been muted up and towards 50, 55, I still think it's a really good price for someone like him, because he's getting spoken about in these sort of terms, this sort of calibre and that sort of company when it comes to the clubs, because of his ability. He's 22 years of age, already establishing himself as an Italian centre-back, and he looks to me like, along with Bastoni, like those two could strike up a partnership for the next 10, 15 years at international level. So whoever lands one or two of them at domestic level is going to be in for a good old time.
You've got a comment here from Greg Torres, Guitar Nice, Greg, hope all as well. Greg says he's going to end up going for like 70, 80 million pounds after these Euros. I'd be out of the question
if that was the price.
I think that's, I mean, listen, again, if he is that good and he's worth that much money, and Michael Edwards thinks he is, and Richard Hughes, by the way, is worth mentioning this conversation with his Serie A links as well, obviously growing up in Italy and stuff like that. So if they still believe he's worth the money, so be it. But I'm kind of with you a little bit. I think if you start talking 80s, then I'm just a bit like, oh, hang on. Because then you are talking a very good season for Bologna, got in the Champions League, of course, and a good Euros. Is that enough to justify 80 million?
There's also the likes of Mark Gay and things like that. And Mark Gay's already Premier League proven. He's English.
Same age, by the way.
Same age. I don't think... you'd be looking at 60 to 70 mil for him. So for me, it'd seem a bit mad to go and do that. And I want Calafiori more than anyone else.
Yeah, we'll wait and see then on that one what the fee would be. So I think I wouldn't be shocked if it was like around the 60 million euros mark, 50 to 60 million pounds. I don't know, just because of the age, because of the fact that he's like the hot prospect. I don't even think it's just the Euros, because listen, I actually don't think many teams will sign someone based off like 4 or 5 games. What it shows, if you've got any doubts about him performing at the biggest levels or how he deals with pressure, because playing for Bologna is different, with all due respect to Bologna. Playing on the Italian national team and playing well, maybe just clarify something in your mind a little bit. Well, he can clearly deal with pressure because he's so far so good.
Oh, 100%. And just on him, his backstory is really fascinating as well. He had like a really career-threatening injury when he's very, very young, and he actually, I think Jose Mourinho booted him out of Roma, so he had to go to Basel and sort of reinvent himself and get his career going. So even, in spite of his age, he's sort of beyond his years in terms of maturity. He hasn't had the easiest time of it, so to speak. So to get to where he is now and to have these calibre clubs talking and definitely taking a look at him, it'd be music to the ears of Bologna that these more clubs are coming in for him, because the more money they can get, the better. But it's worth mentioning on him that yes, there's loads of abilities there. Yes, there's loads of talent, loads and loads of quality. But actually, his mentality and his personality seems really tough and strong as well. So there's a lot of boxes ticked.
He did his ACL, wasn't it?
It was when he was 16 in a youth game. I can't remember, Victoria Pleasant, I think they might have been playing, but it was a bad ACL. Yeah. I think the doctor, the surgeon, described it as like he was in a car crash.
There was doubts about his career, but
yeah, he was in a bad way.
Yeah.
Absolutely mad. The other thing to think of Bologna is obviously Xerxes. I don't know whether I've said that correct.
Pretty much, yeah.
He looks to be going off. He's another one of their star players. So
Man United.
So that'd be their two best players leaving them. So they're going to want the most amount of money that they can get for them to bring in a suitable replacement.
Especially if they are fit out of bar. Night Train says, I'm a little bit hopeful on this one though, that hasn't actually been quashed by the Liverpool journals. Which it's a fair point. I'm guessing someone somewhere's asked the question about it, and you're right, if it maybe that is yet to come, but you would think if it wasn't happening, to be fair, Liverpool have been relatively quick this year to
Edison one got shut down.
To shut down a few, but Nico Williams was shut down within 24 to 48 hours, and the Minter was 6 hours, I think, before like that one was kind of caboose. So keep an eye on anything to do with Riccardo. On anything to do with Riccardo Calafiori, because he seems to be one of the hot prospects.